And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later in the discussion that I'm going to go into here today. But I just want you to bear this quotation in mind as you listen to what I am sharing, because as you listen, you will gain a clearer and clearer understanding of what Eckhart Tolle meant when he made this statement, that where there is anger, there's always pain underneath. Okay? So let's have a look at anger styles. Did you know that there are different styles or patterns in which anger shows up? You may have heard of some of these that I have on this slide. I know I hear people using the term passive aggressive quite a lot. It's a buzzword. It's a very trendy thing to say, that someone is passive aggressive. But it is only one of the patterns of anger that you would see human beings demonstrating. And so I want to share these 5 anger styles with you, because these are the ones that you are likely to see most often in the people around you. And I would hasten to add that these are the ones that you probably are going to identify with yourselves, meaning this is what you are going to find resonates with how you behave and how you show up in the world. So if you feel like I'm stepping on your corn a little bit as I talk about these anger styles, it's probably because I am stepping on your corn a little bit. It's okay. It's okay. It's all love. Okay. And you don't have to tell anybody if you feel like your corn got stepped on. Just, just keep it to yourself and turn it into a teachable moment. Okay. So let's have a look at these anger styles. So the first one is the aggressive anger style. Now, for each one, I am going to give you very clear examples so that it is practical. I'm going to bring it home to you. So I'm not just going to give you the definition as you see laid out here on the screen. The definition is just for the purpose of, putting something on the slide. I want you to be able to clearly apply this to your day-to-day experience. And so for each one, I am going to give you an actual experience so that you see exactly how it shows up and how it works. So the aggressive anger style. Now, this anger style is one that is seeking control. It feels the need to be in control, whether it is feeling like you're not in control of yourself and wanting to regain control of yourself, or wanting control of the situation, or wanting control of somebody else in the situation, feeling the need to manipulate somebody so that you can feel in control of them. It's really an anger that is grounded in control. And it really involves a lot of manipulation. You will find people who engage in this anger style are manipulative of others, and they do it in a way that would cause you to feel guilt or to feel bad, so that ultimately what you do is begin to cower rather than push back or defend yourself or advocate for yourself. You begin to feel bad somehow and you begin to cower, giving that person the upper hand, and they ultimately win. They ultimately have control, right? And so what will this anger look like? It will look like threats. It will look like abusive behavior. And remember that abuse is not just physical. I always like to make sure I say that. I know people know this, but it's just a gentle reminder. Abuse is never just physical. Abuse can be emotional. It can be psychological. It can be financial. Abuse shows up in many forms. And so when I say abuse, I want you to think the entire gamut, all the possible variations of abuse. And so it looks like abuse. It looks like them humiliating you. It looks like them manipulating you. It looks like them doing whatever is required so that you can cower and back down and let them have the win. That's what aggressive anger looks like. Let's have a look at an example. Now, I am going to use the same example for each one of these 5 anger styles, but I'm going to switch it up so that you can see how the anger style shows up in the same situation. All right, you'll see what I mean. So here is the example for the aggressive anger style. So after a long day, you are exhausted. You come home and you make dinner for the family. But after eating all the delicious food that you cooked, your children and your partner get up and leave the table without helping you clean anything up. They walk off and they go off into the living room to sit down, put their legs up, and watch TV. They're having a ball. So you become angry and you march into the TV room and you grab the remote out of your partner's hand and slam it into the wall. And the remote crashes into pieces. The batteries fly left. The back of the remote flies right. Everything crumbles and falls to the ground. And there is silence in the living room. And your partner and your children are stunned and they look up at you and you begin to shout, I made dinner and now I'm cleaning everything by myself. All of you are sitting in here. Am I the slave? Am I the maid? That's you. Your partner and your children are stunned and traumatized by this demonstration, this dramatic presentation that you just put on. And they silently just get up and move to the kitchen and start helping to clean and wash dishes. That is aggressive anger right there. Okay? I don't feel like I need to say anything more about that. I see somebody saying something in the chat. Let me have a look at the chat. Please don't think I'm ignoring you. But I see Dion is asking if I can put this into full presentation mode. I am sure I could. Here we go. Yeah. Good. That should be better. All right. So on to the next. Passive anger. Now, you're welcome, Dion. So passive anger. Now, a passive person is someone who does everything in their power to avoid conflict. They're very conflict averse. They do not like confrontation. They don't want an argument. And so they do whatever they need to, even if it is to their own detriment, even if they have to suffer to avoid conflict. And so these people tend not to express their needs. They don't say how they're really feeling. And they have trouble advocating for themselves, speaking up for themselves, defending themselves, saying no to you. If you are telling them to do something that they really don't want to do, they struggle greatly with this. And so when a person who is like this becomes angry, clearly the goal for that person is to try not to show their anger, because remember that they really want to avoid conflict. And they believe that anger will create conflict. And so rather than speak up or say something, you will find that they are avoiding the problem. They are fearful of speaking up and saying that it is even a problem. They might pretend that they are okay with whatever is going on, even though it is making them very uncomfortable, and even though it might be creating suffering for them. What might that look like in the example that I just gave? So let's go back to the example again. After a long day, you are exhausted, you come home, you make dinner for the family. They enjoy the delicious meal, and your children and your partner get up and leave the table, and they don't clean anything. Just leave everything sitting there. You become angry. But in this case, you're taking a passive anger style. What does that look like? You start cleaning up the kitchen, and the anger is there. But then after a while, you start feeling a little guilty because you are that person who is very conflict and confrontation averse. And so you start trying to convince yourself that you really shouldn't be angry with your family because your partner, worked so hard during the day, and, the children had so much homework and so on and so forth. And so you spend the next 2 hours in the kitchen, cleaning, washing the dishes, and putting everything away all by yourself. When your partner calls out to you from the TV room and says, "Honey, do you need some help in there?" You smile and you respond, "No, darling, everything is totally fine. I have everything under control." But inside, you're boiling. That, my friends, is passive anger. Okay? I wonder if I'm stepping on anybody's corn yet. Don't put it in the chat. Keep it to yourself. All right. So on to the next. You have the passive aggressive style. This, like I said, is one that I hear people talk about a lot. I hear people talk about this so frequently that I sometimes ask myself if they are aware that there are several other anger styles out there. I also sometimes ask myself, are they confusing passive aggressive with other anger styles because they're not aware that there are other anger styles out there? But this is only one of them. It may be a common one, which might be why people talk about it frequently, but let's have a look and see what the passive aggressive anger style actually looks like. So the passive aggressive person uses subtle, under the surface, not easily seen, inconspicuous ways to manipulate a situation or a person. So they might use their body language, they use their tone of voice, they use maybe actions or things that they do, but these are not necessarily openly aggressive behaviors. As a matter of fact, the passive aggressive person is skilled at ensuring that their behaviors cannot be labeled as aggressive, so that nobody can say, "Oh, see, you're angry." No. Instead, they're doing the angry things, but in a passive manner or a subtle manner that makes it difficult or very nearly impossible for you to label it and say, you are angry about whatever it is. The goal is to perhaps not appear angry, but do angry things while not appearing angry, if that even makes sense. But this is essentially what the goal of passive aggressive behavior is. And so the passive aggressive behavior might look like silent treatment, stonewalling, withdrawing acts of love or affection, while at the same time claiming that they're fine. So let's see what this might look like in the example that I am using. Back to the example again. Here we go. After a long day, you are exhausted. You come home, you cook a delicious, healthy dinner for your family. After eating the food, your children and your partner get up and walk off. They don't touch anything. They leave everything there for you to clean up, and they're off to the TV room to watch their favorite program. You become angry. In this particular scenario, you are going to show up as passive aggressive. So you're furious that they would leave all the work for you, especially considering that in your state of exhaustion, you stood up there and cooked that dinner for them. So you start muttering to yourself, I don't know what they think is going on here. You're in the kitchen, you're washing the dishes. You're not saying anything out loud to them. You're just muttering under your breath, you know. I don't know what they think is going on here. They think I'm a maid or something. All of them just got up and just walked out and left me here to do all this work by myself. But it's fine. It's all right. So your children and your partner hear you. They can hear you muttering under your breath in the kitchen, right? But you're not talking to them. But technically you are. And they call out, and they're like, Mom, are you saying something? Or Dad, are you saying something? What was that? And you are like, oh, nothing, I'm fine. You go on watching your TV. And then you proceed to feed all of the leftovers that they were planning to pack for lunch the next day to the dog. And whatever the dog doesn't eat, you put it in the trash. And the next morning, the partner and the children are looking for the leftovers that they were thinking they would pack for lunch, and they're all gone. Passive aggressive. I find this passive aggressive behavior hilarious. I'm sorry. But do you know people like this? I do. I hope nobody in the hearing of my voice is like this. Okay? Don't put it in the chat. Keep it to yourself. Okay. So on to the next. You have the projective aggressive anger style. So the projective aggressive anger style is one in which you find a person appearing to be passive, but they're angry. And what they do, these are some smart people. What they do is they project their anger instead of expressing it themselves, because they don't want to express the anger themselves. So they want to be passive about it, but they also don't want their anger to stay with them. They want to get it out. They just don't want to be the one to get it out. So what do? They project their anger onto somebody else so that that person will express the anger, and then that will give them a sense of satisfaction. All right. Now, this may look one of two ways. It may look like you saying something like, let's go back to the example. After a long day, you are exhausted. You come home, you make a delicious, healthy dinner for your family. They eat all the food you cook, they enjoy the food, and then they get up and walk off to the TV room and leave all the work for you to clean up. You are angry. But you quietly and very meekly and very humbly walk out into the living room and you say, it was nice of you to offer to help me clean up, right? To which your partner responds, I don't mind helping you clean up. If you want me to clean up, to help you clean up, just say so. And then you respond with, why are you answering me with an attitude? Why you have to get upset just because I said that? Your partner, of course, is not upset at all. Your partner is just responding to what you said. You are the one who is upset. You are the one who is furious, but you don't want to express it. You don't want to be the one to start the outburst or the fight. So you project that anger onto somebody else. In this case, your partner. That's why it's called projective aggressive. So you accuse your partner of being angry when they're not angry at all. The partner is just saying, I don't mind helping you clean up. If you want me to help you clean up, I'll help you clean up. Why you have to answer me like that? Why are you answering me in that tone of voice? Your partner is legit confused at this point. They're just like, what tone of voice are you talking about? I'm not upset. And you accuse them of being upset. One of the easiest ways to make someone angry is by accusing them of being angry when they're not angry. And so you have effectively projected your anger that you did not want to express onto somebody else, and you have managed to pick a fight at the same time. That is an example of projective aggressive behavior. You might also, when you are being projective aggressive, not just project your anger onto the person so that they then become angry and create conflict, but you might project your anger onto the person so that they can lash out on somebody else in the room, because you want to lash out on somebody in the room, but you don't want to do it yourself. So you project your anger onto a third party who will then lash out on somebody else in the room. I'll give you an example of that. You go out and instead of addressing your wife or your husband or your partner, you address the children and you say something to the children. You walk out and say something to the children like, how many times do I have to tell you that you do not have a maid in here? You eat and all of you just got up and left your plates. Do you think that me and your father are your maids in here? Do you think that we are here just to pick up after you? You need to learn to be responsible. Clean up after yourselves, children. We're tired of telling you the same thing. You notice how you just roped your partner into that? So what's your partner going to do now in a situation like that? It's like you have left them no choice. They have to say something. They have to speak up. And so your partner will now jump in now, because they might even be confused. They're like, how did I get involved in this? But because you are shouting at the children, your partner somehow feels compelled to join in on this dramatic presentation, and also starts, go and help your mother clean up. Go and help your mother. Your mother is right. How many times do we have to tell you that we're not cleaning up after you? What you think is going on here? And so you would have projected your anger onto someone and then gotten that person to lash out on a third person without you really having to express the fact that you are unhappy with the way a situation has been handled. All right. And finally, the assertive anger style. Now, this is the one that we should all be aiming for. This is the only healthy anger style on this slide. Okay, this is the ultimate goal. This is what we should all be aiming for. Now, in the assertive anger style, you would find that the assertive person is clearly articulating or stating their needs. They do it in an open and direct way. They're using clear communication. They are not waiting for anybody to guess how they feel or read their mind. They're not trying to be subtle and hope that you just figure it out. They're not going to be passive about it. If they feel a way about something you've said or done, they will speak up, but they will do it respectfully and clearly. They consider other people's feelings, but will not allow you to trample on their own feelings. So your opinions do matter, how you feel matters, but it is not going to cancel out their opinions and their feelings. And so they are asserting themselves in the situation while at the same time being respectful of you. This is what being assertive looks like. And this is how we should all aim to handle moments when we feel anger. What would your behavior look like in this situation, in the example that I have been using? So after a long day, you're exhausted, you come home, you make your dinner for your family. Everybody eats the food and then they all get up and walk off and go to the TV room, and they don't help you clean up anything. What do you do as an assertive person? You walk into the TV room, you kindly ask them to turn the TV off, and you calmly say, I know we're all tired. Everybody here is tired. We've all had a long day, but I feel hurt that nobody offers to help me clean up after we've enjoyed the delicious dinner that I made. It makes me feel as if I am not valued. And so I'd really appreciate it if you could just pause from the show, help me clean up, and then maybe we can all enjoy the show together. That is what being assertive would look like. And I know it sounds really idealistic, but like I said, that's the goal. That is what we should all be aiming for. Okay, now let's move to the next slide. All right. Now, I want to show you a very short video clip from YouTube, which is entitled The Science of Anger. After you would have watched this, then I'm going to talk you through a little of what is said in the video. But I really like this video because I think that it very succinctly, but also very clearly explains what happens in your body, literally in your physical body, each time you become angry. It's very insightful. Let's take a moment and have a look at it, and then we will talk a little bit about some of the things that are said in the video. All right, so let's see if we can give this a click. All right.
There is absolutely nothing going on with me romantically.
Great.
Okay,
Can I buy
we
you a
don't
drink
want to
after
see all
this?
of these ads,
I'd like that.
so we're just going to skip over that.
Hey there, welcome to Life Noggin. Have you ever been so angry that you start to relate to those cartoon characters who have steam coming out of their ears? Or maybe you feel like your blood is boiling beneath your skin. Even though you may know what the external cause of your anger is, what's actually going on inside your body when you're angry? That's what we're gonna find out. Imagine that you are driving on a freeway and
All right. I'm going to stop share for a moment and do this again, because I think I did not. Let's try this again. Okay.
welcome to Life Noggin. Have you ever been so angry that you start to relate to those cartoon characters who have steam coming out of their ears? Or maybe you feel like your blood is boiling beneath your skin. Even though you may know what the external cause of your anger is, what's actually going on inside your body when you're angry? That's what we're gonna find out. Imagine that you are driving on a freeway and somebody suddenly cuts you off. You will most likely get angry and either honk your horn or possibly give them a not so nice hand gesture. Admit it, we've all done it before. Inside your brain, the amygdala, which responds to outside stimuli, processes the car cutting you off and coordinates the release of neurotransmitters called catecholamines. These cause you to feel a burst of energy, preparing you for physical action. The hormones epinephrine and norepinephrine are also released, increasing your blood pressure. Your heart rate increases and your face may flush as the blood rushes to your extremities. If you have ever seen someone so angry that they turn red as a lobster, this is why. If you want to keep this anger at bay, you'll have to use your prefrontal cortex. You can think of this as the area that controls your judgment. And if you don't use your prefrontal cortex, you may act aggressively towards others. Take Phineas Gage as an example. In 1848, while at work, a tamping iron was shot through his left cheek and exited through the top of his head. Somehow he survived, but his frontal lobe was severely damaged. damaged. After his injury, he is said to have been fitful, irreverent, and had the animal passions of a strong man. Perhaps the damage to his frontal lobe destroyed his ability to control his behavior. He was not only a new man, but also one incapable of self-constraint. It's also important to note that constant chronic anger can greatly increase a person's chance of getting a heart disease like high blood pressure or heart attacks. Anger and the heart are very connected. This is because epinephrine and norepinephrine constrict blood vessels, making your heart pump harder. These two hormones also increase the amount of glucose and fatty acids in the blood. The increased levels can lead to damage in artery walls and speed up the process of atherosclerosis. When the fatty plaque builds up in the arteries, it narrows them and decreases the flow of oxygen-rich blood to the body. This can lead to a heart attack, stroke, or death. But fear not, there are healthy ways to control your anger, such as meditation, anger management therapy, exercise, or even just relaxing and doing something fun, like watching a few Life Noggin videos. So tell us, what is one thing that makes you angry, and what do you do to get over that feeling? Make sure you come back every Monday and Thursday for a brand new video. And if you want even more Life Noggin, check out these videos we
Okay. All right. So back to our PowerPoint. All right. So that was a very, very quick overview of the science of anger, or in other words, what is happening in our bodies when we become angry. So there are a couple things. Now that video went really, really quickly. So I am going to walk through a few of the things that he just covered really fast in that video. The first and the most important thing that was mentioned was the amygdala. The amygdala is a little portion or section of your brain that is responsible for some very important things. The amygdala is key in preparing your body for the anger reaction, or the way your physical body begins to behave when you experience that emotion, anger. The amygdala is responsible for sending signals to your adrenal glands to release adrenaline when you become angry. And I'm going to talk about adrenaline and what that does. But let's stay on the amygdala for a moment longer. The amygdala is responsible for how we experience our emotions. It is responsible for fear, for anger, for sadness, and how our body responds to all of these emotions. The amygdala is the one that is behind how our bodies experience these emotions. The amygdala is also very helpful in the way we go about controlling aggressive behaviors when we are experiencing certain emotions. The amygdala is the part of your brain that triggers your survival instincts. And when you hear survival instincts, you're thinking fight, flight, freeze. Like if you are in a situation where you are required to save your life, a very stressful situation or a dangerous situation, this is where your amygdala comes into play. And your amygdala is triggering your survival instincts. Not only does it help to trigger your survival instincts, but it also helps you to store memories around that dangerous or stressful situation, so that in future, whenever this event occurs again, you begin to experience the same emotions, and you are probably going to engage the same actions that you engaged the previous time that happened. Um, and so your amygdala is essentially storing information, not just in your brain, but literally in the cells of your body, so that you begin to recognize a similar event and respond in a similar way each time. Now, another thing that the amygdala does is it sends signals. Once it starts preparing your body for the anger reaction or the anger response, it immediately sends signals to your adrenal glands. What is the job of the adrenal gland? The adrenal gland's job is to produce hormones. Now, there are specific hormones that are produced at specific points in your body. When you are experiencing an anger reaction, one of the main hormones that is being pushed into your body by your adrenal glands is adrenaline. I am sure many of you have heard about adrenaline. People talk about adrenaline all the time. I am not, however, sure that people fully understand what adrenaline does, the purpose that it serves in the body. And I also don't think people understand that adrenaline is not just helpful, it can also be harmful if it is being overproduced in the body. Okay, so adrenaline, like I said, is a hormone produced by your adrenal glands. It's sent into your bloodstream, normally whenever you feel scared or stressed out. Adrenaline is quickly sent out into your body. This is what people often refer to as the adrenaline rush. You hear people talking about, I had an adrenaline rush. This is what they talk about when your bloodstream is suddenly flooded with adrenaline. It usually happens really fast when your body is sent into fight, flight, freeze mode by your amygdala. You have probably heard about fight, flight, freeze as well, which is a response that is triggered by your sympathetic nervous system. We're not going to talk about that part right now. There's a whole other presentation. But it is triggered by the sympathetic nervous system. And this is another system in your body which kind of does work that is similar to what the amygdala does and prepares your body for a response to anger or stress or danger, okay? And so your body is in preparation for whatever it is that's going on, whatever the stressor is. The organs inside don't know, they just know that something is stressing you out and they are preparing your body for it. And adrenaline is a hormone that helps your body to do this. So it's literally preparing your body to fight or to run or to whatever it is that you need to do to save your life from whatever danger or stressor is present. Now, adrenaline has been associated in a lot of studies with hypertension, or what we commonly refer to as high blood pressure. There are so many studies out there that have linked the two, which means that while adrenaline can serve you in many ways, adrenaline, when it is being overly produced in the body, and that can happen, there are situations in which we have found that there are persons whose adrenal glands are producing too much adrenaline, way more than they need. And that results in the body becoming sick. And one of the main things that we see resulting from that is hypertension or high blood pressure. You might also see things happening like you are frequently getting very bad headaches. This can also result from an overproduction of adrenaline in your body. Lightheadedness, a lot of sweating, like overly sweating. There are some people who just naturally sweat profusely. They just have very high perspiration. But if you are not one of those people and you suddenly find that you are sweating a lot more than you normally do, this could be an indication that your adrenal glands are overproducing adrenaline in your system. Having very quick pulse, or a pulse that is much quicker than would be considered normal. in medical terms, is also something that has been found to happen due to the overproduction of adrenaline. And I'm mentioning these things because I want to reiterate the point that, contrary to popular belief, the adrenaline rush that we think is so amazing can be harmful if it is happening too much in our body. It is helpful in moments when we need it. Adrenaline does serve a purpose. Let me say that. You need adrenaline to react in a dangerous situation, but there are times when it's not helpful for your body at all. And so one of the ways that you can begin to control your adrenaline production is by learning to manage your anger, because this is one of the main ways that adrenaline gets secreted into your body. And many times it's being secreted unnecessarily and in quantities that really end up becoming harmful for us at the end of the day. I want to mention that other than anger, there are other things that we can do, that we often do sometimes, that produce adrenaline. One of them is the use of nicotine. I imagine that we may not have anybody listening here today, I am assuming, who is using nicotine. I could be wrong about that. Nicotine, of course, is found in cigarettes, and there are a lot of studies that show that nicotine causes your body to release adrenaline, which causes your heart to speed up, increased heart rate, and of course, as I mentioned before, high blood pressure. Nobody wants to have high blood pressure. High blood pressure is the thing that is making your heart work harder than it should, and it can lead to heart failure, heart attacks, and strokes. And so we want to avoid those as much as possible. Persons who live with anxiety, panic disorders, and those types of things also tend to produce high levels of adrenaline. Because if you're having anxiety attacks or panic attacks, if you have any type of anxiety disorder or panic disorder, you are probably overproducing adrenaline, because you constantly feel as though you are in some type of danger. You are constantly feeling stressed out and under pressure. And these attacks put your body under stress every single time. And you keep getting flooded with adrenaline every single time, which of course is making your heart work harder and is ultimately going to jeopardize your physical health. So it's not just your mental health that is deteriorating under circumstances like these. All right. So adrenaline, of course, is also produced in the body whenever we're doing something that is, I guess you can say, exciting, but might also be a little bit dangerous, like extreme sports and those types of things. I don't know, rock climbing, zip lining, skiing, or anything that could be considered dangerous. Your body also produces adrenaline when you are about to take on a task that is really significant or huge, or that is going to require that you exert a lot of physical effort. Your body tends to produce a lot of adrenaline in those moments. And so there are times when you have no control over the adrenaline production, but there are also a lot of times when you do. And one of those times is when you become angry and opt not to take control of that anger as you could or as you should. So let's talk about the prefrontal cortex, right? Let me touch, before I go to the prefrontal cortex, let me touch on the triggers and the flushing and the teeth grinding very quickly, very briefly. The trigger is simply referring to whatever it is that causes you to become angry in the first place. This diagram also speaks to flushing because, of course, your adrenaline rush is going to cause blood vessel dilation. Anything that can cause blood vessel dilation is obviously going to also increase your blood pressure, which is why I keep talking about the hypertension that can result from this. But it is also the thing that causes you to turn red when you become angry. And you often hear people saying somebody's so angry that they turned red. It literally does happen. You may not see it on somebody who is more melanated, but this is literally something that is happening in the body, because as your blood vessels dilate and the blood is going to be rushing into places like your face, for example, which would cause you to get flushed. And then the teeth grinding is used as an example of the tensing of muscles in your body, which also happens whenever adrenaline is being released into your body. The adrenaline rush causes muscles to tense, and that includes the muscles in your face and in your jaw. And so you would find teeth grinding to be a common thing that happens. And this is only one example of muscles tensing in the body because of the increasing adrenaline levels that are happening in that moment. Now let's talk about the prefrontal cortex, because this is where the anger management comes into play. And we cannot have a conversation about anger and not talk about managing that anger. What role does the prefrontal cortex play? The prefrontal cortex really is that part of the brain that jumps into gear when it sees the amygdala switch on. Because from the moment the amygdala switches on, the rest of the brain knows what's about to go down. The rest of the brain is already aware that the amygdala is preparing your body for an anger response. And so they are like, amygdala is about to act up. Amygdala is about to start some drama. And so what do the other parts of the brain do? Specifically the prefrontal cortex, which is located right here at the front of your head. The prefrontal cortex is keeping an eye on that amygdala, because the prefrontal cortex is that part of the brain that helps you to be rational, that helps you to control your emotions, that helps you to be balanced in your response. It's like having that friend who calms you down when you are getting riled up. So the amygdala is the friend who's like, yeah, I'm ready to fight. Let them come. I am about to beat everybody up in here. That's amygdala. Prefrontal cortex is the friend who is going to come over and touch amygdala on the shoulder and say, amygdala, let me talk to you for a minute. Let's think this through. Let's think this through and make sure that, you don't do anything that you're going to regret. Yeah, exactly that, Dion. That's prefrontal cortex is the friend who's going to come up and say, amygdala, I'm going to need you to chill out, because listen, we don't want any problems. Let's see if we can handle this peacefully, right? The problem here is that most people do not allow prefrontal cortex to do its job, okay? There are people who, even though the prefrontal cortex is trying its best to do its job, they will ignore it, they will shut it off, they will drive it away and try to let silence it, and just let amygdala do whatever it wants. Of course, that does not usually end well. Obviously, we want to be able to move into the prefrontal cortex and stay in that section of our brain when we find ourselves in moments of anger, because that is where the executive functions happen. That is where you make those wise choices and good decisions, right there in that prefrontal cortex. So you don't want to shut it down in those moments. What you want to do is, when you hear it starting to kick in and say, hey, think before you act, you want to go there and try to make a decision from that place in your brain rather than using the amygdala in that moment. And that is literally where anger management occurs, right there in that prefrontal cortex. And so I am going to talk for a few minutes about the prefrontal cortex, because we have to get into this. The prefrontal cortex is a part of the brain that does not get enough attention. I think we need to have entire presentations on the prefrontal cortex, Let's start with the fact that the prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed until the age of 25. Can we have a moment of silence for that? Okay, thank you for that moment of silence. Because if your prefrontal cortex is where the executive functions take place, and it is not fully developed until the age of 25 years, what does that say about your decision making prior to hitting age 25? Do you see how serious this is? Do you see why sometimes they say that the folly of youth is a serious, serious thing? This is literally me sitting here saying to you that your ability to fully use your prefrontal cortex is not there 100% until the age of 25. Your brain is literally still developing. I know that people think that once they turn adult, like I'm 18 now, I'm fully, no, sir, no, ma'am, your brain is still developing. It is the reason why you are still prone to doing dumb stuff. Yeah, I said it. I probably could have found a nicer way to say that, but you know what I mean. Yeah, you are literally still developing your brain all the way to 25. It is the reason why I urge young people to avoid making decisions that can wait until after they get past that age. Decisions that could potentially alter the entire course of your life. I won't begin naming any decisions, but you know that there are some big, big decisions that can wait, that often are made before 25. And sometimes we look back and we're like, should have probably waited. Right? The prefrontal cortex, my friends. Let me read what I have on this slide. The development and maturation of the prefrontal cortex occurs primarily during adolescence and is fully accomplished at the age of 25 years. The development of the prefrontal cortex is very important for complex behavioral performance, as this region of the brain helps accomplish executive brain functions. I have some of those executive brain functions on this slide. Let me run through them. The ability to balance short-term rewards with long-term goals. That's just a fancy way to say that it gives you the ability to wait. It gives you the ability to rationalize how waiting for something and having delayed gratification is better and healthier than trying to indulge and enjoy everything now, which could perhaps be to your detriment later. It's the ability to wait. You don't have to do everything right now. So you don't have to go and have sex right now. You don't have to go and move out right now. You don't have to, all of the things that people are often rushing to do. The ability to balance short-term rewards with long-term goals. Impulse control and delayed gratification is controlled by the prefrontal cortex. Emotion regulation or modulation of intense emotions, being able to experience intense emotions while at the same time acting appropriately. That is controlled in the prefrontal cortex, shifting and adjusting your behavior as situations change, your ability to be resilient, your ability to be flexible is controlled in the prefrontal cortex. Being able to foresee the consequences of your decisions. That is a skill that is managed by the prefrontal cortex. So you are able to make a choice today, but while making that choice, you are already able to assess and to analyze what the possible consequences of that behavior now could be in the future. Therefore, determining if it is a choice that you want to make today. The ability to foresee those things. That is a skill that is developed in the prefrontal cortex. Considering the future impact of current choices and making predictions, reasonable, intelligent predictions. It is responsible for your attention span, meaning your ability to stay focused on a task and see it through to completion. This is controlled in the prefrontal cortex. It speaks also not just to seeing a task through to completion, but also being able to focus sufficiently to hold intelligent conversation, to be able to be a good and articulate and clear communicator, to develop healthy interpersonal relationships. All of those things require focused attention. And these things happen in the prefrontal cortex. It is also responsible for organizing thoughts, for your ability to problem solve, to strategize, to plan. All of these things are done in the prefrontal cortex. It is responsible also for your inhibition. Inhibition meaning that it helps you to have some scruples. Like there are certain things that you just would never do. Inappropriate behavior, and things that would be considered inappropriate or unbecoming. The prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain that helps you to determine, you know what, this is not something I should be doing in public, for example, or this is not something that aligns with my principles. I should not do this. I will live to regret this if I do this. It also finally helps you to be able to manage various bits and pieces of information simultaneously, meaning that you don't have to just be focusing on one thing. It is the ability to multitask, but multitasking internally. All of these are skills that are developed in the prefrontal cortex. I hope that I'm this message is coming home to you today. I'm sending a message here without actually coming out and saying it. And I believe you're getting the message, okay? So this is so much bigger than just anger management, okay? Anger management happens here as well, but this is so much more than anger management. I want you to take away a lot more from this slide and from this presentation than just the ability to manage anger and other emotions. All right, let's move. Next slide. Okay, so very quickly, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I'm just going to run over this real fast. I wanted to just quickly share with you a few things other than what I have already mentioned that happen in the body when we are angry. Some of the things on this slide I've already touched on, like the high blood pressure, etc. But there are a couple other things that can happen in your body over time if you are constantly in a state of anger and therefore having the anger hormones being released into your body, adrenaline being one of them. So anger has been associated with things like tunnel vision, sensitivity to light, blurry vision, dry mouth, which is essentially when you have a condition where the glands in your mouth are not producing sufficient saliva to keep the inside of your mouth moist, and you develop a condition which is referred to as dry mouth. This has been associated at the body's response to anger. Of course, decreased blood flow in the digestive system, because when your body is in fight, flight, freeze, it tends to shut the digestive system down. And if your body is constantly in fight, flight, freeze, which means that your digestive system is constantly being shut down, it means that you are over time going to develop digestive tract issues. So these are people who often have acid reflux, heartburn, indigestion, and other digestive tract problems, which are associated with anxiety and panic disorder and anger and all of the other things that cause the body to constantly be in fight, flight, freeze mode. It slows down your metabolism. And so this actually reduces your ability to lose weight. If you're trying to shed pounds and have a healthier weight, and you find that you are not able to lose weight, your metabolism is extremely slow. This has also been associated with anger, believe it or not, because in addition to adrenaline, when your body is having an anger response, it produces another hormone, which is called cortisol. And cortisol is a hormone that slows down the body's metabolic rate. What it does is it somehow causes the body to increase its fat storage. Don't ask me to explain how it causes the body to increase the fat storage. A medical doctor would have to tell you that. I just know that it causes the body to increase fat storage, and it specifically increases fat storage in certain areas of the body. One of those areas is the midsection. So that big belly that sometimes you cannot seem to get rid of, maybe it is being caused by the overproduction of cortisol in your body. And cortisol is a stress hormone, just like adrenaline. And cortisol causes fat storage and slows your metabolic rate down, making it very hard for you to lose weight, while at the same time making your body store fat. You see how that could not work out if you're trying to shed pounds, right? And so that's another thing that happens in your body. I already spoke about the fact that it increases your likelihood for stroke and heart attack, headaches, migraines, issues with your eyes, increased pressure inside your eyes. It is associated with thyroid issues as well. And I don't have time to get into the importance of the thyroid gland. That's a whole other conversation. That's for a whole other presentation, right? Perhaps you should consider at some point inviting a medical doctor to speak about this on one of your afternoon programs, to speak about the function of the thyroid gland. It is not to be played with. And anger responses in the body are linked to decreased thyroid function. I am telling you, I know of persons who have had issues with their thyroid. It is probably one of the most disruptive things that can happen in your life. It literally just throws your entire body off. Everything just malfunctioning. Your thyroid is pivotal to the proper healthy functioning of your body. All right, very important. It has been linked to lowered bone density as well. All right, you also don't want to play around with anything that is going to be impacting your bone density, particularly if you are a woman and particularly as you are aging, right? The older you are, the more vulnerable you are to bone density issues. And you know that having bones heal after a certain age, it gets very complicated, right? And women, of course, are more vulnerable to conditions like osteoporosis, which impacts the bones. And so you want to be looking at anger from a totally different perspective after today. Like, getting angry is no longer just about the emotions. Getting angry is about your whole body. At this point, it's about your whole body. It's a health issue, right? And of course, I already spoke about it's speeding up your heart rate, the blood pressure issues it can cause. It has also been linked to blood glucose levels, the fatty acid level in your body, of course, because of the cortisol, the stress hormone. And so anger, let's stop looking at anger as just it's just another an emotion that I feel here and there. Not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal. So let's start treating it like a big deal. Okay? All right, next slide. Next slide. Here we go. This slide is quickly just saying to you that anger is sometimes a secondary emotion. It can be primary as well, but sometimes it's a secondary emotion. What do I mean by primary and secondary emotion? Let me quickly tell you. I will use an example. Often, when you see a child in school who is behaving like a bully, coming to school, always angry, always aggressive, beating up everybody, everyone in the class or in the school is afraid of him or her, that bully is often, when you check it out, that bully is often the child who is being abused at home, who is being neglected, who feels unloved, not valued, not appreciated, who receives no affection from the caregivers in his or her life, who has low self-esteem issues, low self-confidence, all of those things. When you properly assess what is going on with that child. But on the surface, you don't see any of that. That's what's happening in the background. When that child comes to school, he or she is the bully. And that's what they are known as. That is what you are seeing in front. Now, what you are seeing in the front, which is anger and aggression, that is just secondary emotions. The primary emotions are the ones at the back. The sadness, the fear, the loneliness, the feeling unloved, all of those are the primary emotions. And the primary emotions sit at the back. They are the ones that we do not see. Most of the time, we don't want anybody to see those because primary emotions make us feel vulnerable. They make us feel embarrassed, ashamed. We don't want people to know about those primary emotions. And so what we do is we keep them in the background, behind the curtain, and we show up in public with the secondary emotions. I hope I'm coming through clearly. The secondary emotions, we are okay with people seeing those because those don't make us feel weak or vulnerable or embarrassed. Those are the emotions that we are all right with people seeing because we think they are more socially acceptable, or they make us look better, or they make us feel better, or they make us feel more confident. They make us feel as if all of the other stuff is well hidden. And that is the difference between the primary and the secondary emotions. So why do I say all of this today? Because anger often shows up as a secondary emotion, meaning it is the one at the front, while the primary emotions, the painful, uncomfortable ones, the ones that make you feel vulnerable and ashamed, are at the back behind the curtain, hiding out. And you show up with the anger. on the outside. So you just walk around, you're just this angry, aggressive person all the time. And you may be known as that. All your co-workers just know that's how you are. Oh, no, that's how she is. She just she's just like that. She's not very friendly, like you just show up as that, as the child who shows up as the bully at school. But most persons are unaware that that's just a secondary emotion. That's just the mask that you use to cover up the primary emotion that is going on in the background. And the primary emotions are the ones that make us vulnerable. And you don't want to be vulnerable, so you hide them. You don't want people to know you're lonely. You don't want people to know that you're sad or depressed or whatever it is. And so you show up as the tough, I'm strong, don't need anybody, I'm aggressive, I got this. Just a mask. That's a secondary emotion. Anger sometimes shows up as a primary emotion too, but more often than not, we see it as a secondary emotion. It is the one at the front that is covering whatever is happening at the back. And that is essentially what this slide is meant to display. If you notice, it says that your primary emotions are usually learned responses, right? Your secondary emotions are learned responses. Primary emotions are not learned. The ones at the back, the ones that you hide, those come naturally. Those are your initial, natural, organic response to life. Something happens, you feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel lonely, you feel left out, you feel unloved, you feel undervalued, unappreciated. All of those painful emotions, nobody has to teach you those. They don't require learning. Those just come wired in your brain, and you feel them and experience them very naturally as you go through life. The ones at the front, the ones that you use to mask what's going on, those are the ones that you learn. You learn those based on the type of family that you grow up in. If that's the way the rest of the family used to behave, everybody just doesn't express how they really feel. They just show up as tough and aggressive. That is what you will do too. And so that's learned. It may also be learned based on the culture that you come from. Nobody's allowed to say that they're sad. Nobody's allowed to say that they're hurt. Nobody's allowed to show weakness. Sometimes that is cultural programming that we receive. Sometimes that comes directly from the way we are socialized. And so that secondary emotion, that mask that you put up in front there, that is learned. The ones at the back, those aren't learned. Those just come with your brain. Your brain just comes wired with those, and you feel those very naturally. But for some reason, you are programmed to believe that those natural emotions that come wired with your brain are inappropriate, and you're not supposed to let them out. You're not supposed to let anybody know that you feel them. This happens, which is why we have to have a whole conversation about primary emotions versus secondary emotions. All right? And like I said a few moments ago, the reason why this is an important slide to put in here is because anger often shows up as a secondary emotion, the one at the front, the mask that we put on. Anger often shows up right there, which is why I said earlier at the beginning with that slide, the quote that I started with earlier. Let's go back to the quote for just a second. What did Eckhart Tolle say? Where there is anger, there is always pain underneath. Are you grasping what he meant? I hope so, because it is very true. Where there is anger, there is always pain underneath. Something is always going on in the background, because most of the time, anger shows up as a secondary emotion. It's just a mask, hiding something. All right, let's keep it moving. Still talking about the anger that is just the mask. Often in psychotherapy, we work with clients who are learning healthy anger management using this diagram, which is called the anger iceberg, to teach the concept of secondary emotions versus primary emotions. The anger iceberg depicts it very well. You see the anger. The anger is what you see. It is what you see above the water. It's the iceberg that everyone can see with the naked eye. The primary emotions that are happening at the back are under the sea. Nobody can see them. And so we just assume that anger is the only thing that's there. My point here is that it is never the only thing that's there. It is always just a front. Something else is going on at the back. If somebody's walking around angry all the time, something is going on at the back. And this is what the anger iceberg diagram is meant to show. And you can see all the things that are hiding out under the water here. Fear, anxiety, doubt, fatigue, embarrassment, grief, guilt, hopelessness, hunger, illness, loneliness, shame, and we could keep going, trauma. But what all you see when you interact with the person is anger, because it shows up 99% of the time as a secondary emotion, masking other, usually painful things at the back. All right, let's keep it pushing. It's starting to get late. Let me check and see what time it is here. Okay, not doing too badly. All right, so you knew this slide was going to come, right? You knew I was going to eventually get to this slide. Do you have anger management issues? Because how can I have a presentation, a whole presentation about anger and not talk about anger management issues? Because some of us have these. Shade thrown. Okay, so do you have anger management issues? Maybe you don't know. Let me help you figure it out. Here are some common signs that you may have anger management issues, because I have very rarely ever met somebody who has anger management issues who openly accepts and admits that they have anger management issues. I mean, there might be a few people who will admit it. Yeah, I know I have anger management issues, yes, and they admit it, maybe reluctantly, but they admit it. But for the most part, persons who have anger management issues are either completely unaware, like they're in total denial about it, or they may not be in total denial, but they still refuse to openly admit it, because to admit it is shameful, it's embarrassing, they feel terrible to say it, and so they prefer instead to pretend that the problem does not exist, which of course is not helpful. So let's see what we might be able to do to identify these issues if they exist inside of us, because none of us is immune to anger. We all experience anger. It's an emotion that every human being has. What looks different for all of us is how we go about managing it, right? So common signs of anger issues to look out for. If every time you are angry, you find yourself hurting others verbally or physically, check yourself. You might have some issues. It is possible to be angry without hurting people, especially not physically. If you're being physically aggressive with people anytime you are angry? Oh, you definitely have some anger management issues. Also, if you're hurting them verbally, if you have to become abusive, verbally abusive when you're angry, it's impossible for you to control yourself and what you say to others, there's an issue. If you find yourself always angry over small, petty things, like little things, things that other people would just overlook, make you angry, even when you are aware that it's a small thing, you still can't stop yourself from getting angry over it, we have an issue. If you are getting angry over the same thing on a regular basis, we also have an issue. Because if it's the same thing that you're getting angry over repeatedly, it means that you know that this is going to be repeated. You are aware that this is perhaps a situation that you will have to deal with again in the future. And so it's supposed to help you to be able to control yourself the next time it happens, because you've already been through it before. So the next time it happens, one would assume that you will be able to be better at tapping into your prefrontal cortex and managing how you respond, because it has happened before. This is a repeated occurrence. If the occurrence is repeating and your response never improves, you just keep responding the same way, what does that say? That we have an issue. Okay? If you are in the habit of breaking objects or damaging property, or whether it's your property or other people's property, when you are angry, you have an issue, right? This might look like breaking dishes, punching doors or walls, throwing things, like the remote. In the example I gave, somebody threw a remote and smashed it against the wall, throwing phones, throwing devices, breaking stuff. That's an issue. You need to do some work around anger management. If you struggle with anger management whenever you consume substances that contain alcohol, we definitely have, definitely, because that has the potential to get you into very bad trouble. I don't even have to talk anymore about that. You know the type of trouble that somebody who cannot manage their anger, who is also consuming alcohol, can get into. That can end wrong on so many levels. So that's definitely a problem that will have to be addressed. And finally, if you are a person who, when you become angry, your physical body has such a violent response to your anger that you start getting headaches, heart palpitations, anxiety attacks, and those types of things start happening, like because your body responds so violently, such a strong reaction to your anger, you have a problem. You have a problem, because it sounds like your anger is quite literally at some point going to kill you. Literally. That's a problem. Okay? So if any of the things on this slide are true of you, you may need to look into getting some assistance with anger management. Okay? And remember, we have already established that anger is not just about your emotions anymore. We have already established here today that anger is about your whole body. At this point, you should realize that controlling or managing your anger is actually equivalent to taking care of your health. Literally, this is you looking after your whole body. It is equivalent to you taking care of your blood pressure, taking care of your heart, making sure that your adrenaline gland isn't overproducing hormones, making sure that you can maintain a healthy weight. All of those things are linked to your anger management? Think on it. Next slide. All right. I'm going to give you a few anger management tips. I'm sure you have heard all the things that I'm going to say on this slide 100 times. I'm sorry, but how could I not give you a few anger management tips? I must. I mean, we cannot not throw out a few tips. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. I know you've heard all of this before, but a few tips to manage your anger. Learn to identify the triggers and the warning signs. In other words, know what the things are that cause you to begin to experience anger. Knowing, being able to identify what these things are is helpful because it helps you to prepare, and it makes you able to better tap into the prefrontal cortex and make wiser choices rather than just letting the amygdala run the show. Talking to someone is helpful in anger management. And it does not have to be a therapist like myself, because I know some of you don't want to go to a therapist. It's okay. You can talk to someone who you trust, who you know can offer you sound, wise, unbiased, impartial advice or assistance in dealing with a situation or a person that is making you angry. Sometimes you may not have the opportunity to talk to someone, or you may not really want to talk to someone. Maybe it's a situation that you prefer to keep private. There are other ways to ventilate your emotions other than just talking. Sometimes you can write it out. You can journal about what you are feeling. You can do an electronic journal if you don't want to do a written journal, but get it out of your system. Breathing and muscle relaxation are good for anger management as well. Doing breath work is very helpful. And other relaxation techniques. If you don't know any relaxation techniques, get on the internet. I'm telling you, there are thousands of relaxation tips, techniques, and ideas that you can find, plethora of them on the internet. So I encourage you to do some research and try incorporating a few of these things into your daily routine. Very helpful. You don't even have to wait for a moment when you're angry to do breath work. Breath work is something that I encourage my clients to just make an everyday practice, because it just helps to just keep you calm. It helps to keep your parasympathetic nervous system stimulated. The parasympathetic nervous system is that part of your nervous system that is responsible for keeping your body calm and relaxed and centered and grounded. And one quick, easy way to stimulate that system is through deep breathing. Just pause and do some breath work. Take some deep breaths. And you are stimulating, just with that act alone, you are stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system and calming your body down. Okay, so you don't have to wait to be angry to do that. You can just do that on a daily basis, because it just helps you to just be a more relaxed, calm person in general. Exercise is very good for helping with anger management. It helps to get all of that anxious energy out of your physical body, also out of your mind, and it puts you in a better position to navigate to the prefrontal cortex and think more clearly and therefore make wiser choices. Stepping away from the situation is also helpful. Sometimes it's just a little distance that we need. Somebody said or did something, or there's a situation or an experience that produces anger. There are times when we do not even have to be there. And if it's a situation where you don't need to be there and you can put distance between you and whatever the situation is, do that. Sometimes that is all that is required for the anger to recede and for you to just get back to your normal life. And finally, reframing. There is a concept in psychotherapy that we refer to as cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is just a fancy way to say that you are learning how to turn a negative thought into a positive one, putting a positive twist on things. For example, you're caught in traffic and you realize that you're going to be late for wherever it is you're trying to get to. You become very angry and agitated. How could we reframe that thought? You could reframe it by thinking to yourself, I am going to be late for this meeting, but perhaps this is a good thing because maybe this traffic is actually saving me from an accident that I could have gotten into. Or maybe this traffic is actually giving me an opportunity to spend some time in my own thoughts. Maybe I need a moment to just be alone with my thoughts, to think through what I am going to say in this meeting very, very, very clearly, so that when I get to the meeting, I'm a little late, but I'm actually more prepared, right? Like that's reframing. It's putting a positive twist on things. It's beginning to see the positives in the situation rather than just the negatives in the situation. And that is possible because there's always something positive. There's always something to be grateful for. It doesn't matter how terrible things look. There's always something to be grateful for. But this is a skill that sometimes you have to develop. Sometimes we have to teach people this skill because they're not accustomed to that. Their brain wasn't wired to do this. They were never taught to do this. And so it becomes very challenging and they literally have to be taught this skill. And it can be developed. This is referred to as reframing. Okay. And is very helpful with anger management. All right. Let's keep going. Next slide. All right. We're almost there. Almost there. Stay with me. Hang in there. Only a few more minutes. So on this slide, I'm talking about repression and suppression. Now, why did I decide to include this? I included this because we believe that anger always looks a particular way. Or at least this is what we are programmed to think. We get this cultural and societal programming, and it makes us just conceptualize things a particular way. And the programming that we receive causes most persons, 99% of people, will have a particular concept of what anger looks like. And this programming happens from very young. When we teach our children what anger looks like, we show them a face that looks like somebody's furious, right? And so they develop that concept of anger. And as they grow older and become adults, people walk away with the idea that anger looks a particular way. And if the person doesn't look like that, they are not angry. Now, we know that that is not true. We know that that is a myth. You know that, and there are people who might be very angry who don't look like what we think anger should look like, or what we have been taught that anger looks like. There are people who might be standing in front of you and they have the brightest smile on their faces, and inside they are furious, livid. That is possible. Anger does not look a particular way. Sometimes it does look like the pictures that we see, like the slide that I had here earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Like this guy. Sometimes anger does look like that, right? But also sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it just looks like a person who just sitting and looking at you smiling, like I'm doing right now, right? And so I say that to say that sometimes anger is repressed or suppressed. And I want you to get the distinction between repression and suppression. And that's the purpose of this slide. Suppression is you recognizing that you're angry, like I'm like, yeah, okay, this person just did this. And right now I am really, really angry. I'm very angry right now. But I am going to suppress this. I am not going to deal with this right now. I'm not going to fight. I am not going to get into any conflict at the moment. And so you deliberately try to forget or not think about whatever is happening. Perhaps you might decide to just not deal with it at all. Perhaps you might decide to deal with it, but deal with it later. But whatever it is, it's not that you're not aware that you are angry. You are aware, but you are making a conscious choice to not address whatever it is in that moment. So this is you deliberately suppressing the anger. And sometimes, sometimes this is necessary. Sometimes it's just not the moment, it's not the time or the place to deal with whatever the situation is. And you decide to deliberately just suppress. But you're aware that it is there. You're conscious. Now, repression is a different thing. Repression is not you consciously choosing not to deal with the anger in that moment. Repression is unconscious. Repression is a situation where you're not even aware of your anger. And I know that it sounds really strange. You're probably thinking to yourself, how could someone be angry and not be aware? Like, that does not sound possible. It is possible, though. It is. There are people who are so unaware of their own emotions and also are so unaccustomed to freely expressing their emotions and allowing themselves to experience all of their emotions that they engage in what we refer to as repression. Repression is a concern. We're not so concerned about suppression. That's why I'm making sure that you understand the difference. The suppression is the person who knows that they're angry. That's a totally different scenario. If I am aware that somebody just did something that made me angry and I opt to suppress it for a while and deal with it later, that's okay. We can do that. Repression, on the other hand, is a problem. We don't want people to repress. Repression is you pushing anger out of your awareness completely, like you don't even realize that you are angry about a thing. You're experiencing the emotion, but you either cannot identify it as anger or you're not even aware that that is what anger is. It's a weird dynamic. But you are aware that it's an unwanted emotion, it's an unwanted impulse of thought, and you just suppress it because to express it or articulate it is just not something that you have ever learned to do. And so you find that there are people who walk around never ever expressing any anger, ever in their lives. And we often applaud people like that because we tell ourselves that that must mean that this person is just really super happy, right? Like they're never, ever angry, ever. Nothing upsets them, ever. No, we're not giving that person a round of applause. No, what we are doing is we are giving that person a gift certificate so that they can come and have a few sessions with me. Is what we're doing. Okay. No, I'm not joking. I'm so serious. Right? Because repression is a problem. Repressed anger is very damaging because it's just hanging out there in your system, doing terrible things to you, and you're not even aware. Okay, let's move to the next slide and talk a little bit more about repression. All right. Dion. Dion is cracking me up in the chat section. Yes, Dion, I'm so serious. I'm very serious today. So let's check out the next slide. Let's talk a little bit more about the repressed anger. So as I said a moment ago, Repressed anger refers to anger that is unconsciously avoided. You're just not even aware that it is there. You deny it and you just push it down. It's buried somewhere deep in your subconscious mind. And repressed anger, as this slide says, contributes to mental health problems. It's related to anxiety. It's related to depression. And if it's left untreated, it causes self-sabotaging behaviors. It leads to self-esteem issues. It can begin to manifest itself in your physical body and literally begin to make you physically ill. And I'm not going to go over all the physical problems that anger can cause because we talked about that already. Because anger literally shows up in your physical body. I listed for you all the things that it can do. If it's literally in your system repressed and you're not even aware that it is there, I mean, what can I say? You are looking at a lot of problems. And then, of course, it is going to cause you to just generally be dysfunctional in your interpersonal relationships, right? Keeping your anger repressed is problematic. You do not want to be walking around with repressed anger just hanging out in your subconscious mind. What are some signs that you may be living with repressed anger? Or maybe not you, maybe someone you know may be living with repressed anger and really needs to do some work to get that out. I mentioned the first one already, never feeling angry, never. This is not something that never angry, never. But they're also one of those people who, they just kind of, maybe you can call it melancholy. They're just low key, nothing upsets them, but they're also very low key. Sometimes, like, it's almost like they might have a little low lying depression or something, but very calm all the time. Nothing that you say or do upsets them. That could be a sign of repressed anger. The overuse of sarcasm or cynicism could be a sign of repressed anger. So they never really get upset, but also they say some things that sting and they're doing it with a smile on their face. And you're just like, is she upset or is that a joke? I don't know. That is a sign of repressed anger. Being uncomfortable with conflict or confrontation and avoiding it at all costs means that you may be walking around with repressed anger. Feeling the need to control many things in your life, like excessive controlling behavior, but you're always showing up as this happy-go-lucky person. You may have some repressed anger going on, and control is just an outlet that you use instead of just working on whatever it is and getting that anger out of your system. If you are having chronic muscle tension, headaches, those could very well, and without explanation, like you've been to the doctor and they don't have any explanation, nobody knows what's wrong with you, those could be physical manifestations of repressed anger. And there may be other physical manifestations as well. Those are just two examples. If you are someone who struggles with boundary setting, standing up for yourself, saying no, and you basically live your life allowing people to violate your boundaries and walk all over you, and you never get upset about it. You never defend yourself. You're never angry. It's okay. People taking advantage of you and all you have to say is, no, it's okay. I'm not upset. It's okay. Repressed anger. Repressed anger, my friends. Repressed anger. Okay? Shutting down, avoiding people, and isolating yourself when you're upset. So you don't have to deal with any conflict. You don't have to express yourself and let people know what you said or what you did hurt my feelings. You say nothing. You say nothing. You just isolate. And then when you're ready, you come out and act like nothing happened. Repressed anger. Complaining often when things don't go your way. Repressed anger. Why could this be a sign of repressed anger? Because you're not really dealing with any issues when you constantly complain. You're not really addressing the issue. What you are doing is just trying to exert control without actually addressing why something is bothering you. I hope that makes sense. But you don't want to say, this is the thing that is bothering me. Can we change this? Instead, you're just always picky, complaining, like just kind of miserable all the time. That is you repressing your anger rather than addressing it. Okay. High levels of chronic stress or anxiety. You understand how this is connected to the amygdala, the production of stress hormones, and the fight, flight, freeze response. We spoke about that. And if you are dealing with chronic stress and anxiety, this could be something that leads to repressed anger as well. Feeling guilty, ashamed, or bad when you are angry, maybe because you were socially programmed, in your family or in your culture, that anger is a bad thing. Nobody's supposed to be angry. And if you're angry, that's bad. It's a bad emotion. Nobody should get angry. Of course, this is not true. Anger is an emotion just like any other. It was put inside us by God, just like all our other emotions. It's okay to feel angry. Sometimes anger is justified. The problem is that some of us don't know how to manage our anger. And so it's not the anger that's bad. It's the poor management that's the problem. Okay. So if you're feeling guilty or ashamed or bad when you get angry, that's an issue that needs to be addressed, because that is obviously going to lead to you repressing your anger, which is going to lead to a host of other issues. Right. Okay. Next slide. All right. This is our last slide for today. We're almost there. Quickly, I just want to give you a few ways to start addressing repressed anger. If there is anyone within the sound of my voice here today who feels like they might be dealing with some repressed anger based on what I have shared, I just want to share a few quick ways that you can begin to handle that. First of all, understand where your anger is coming from, which is just another way to say, know what your triggers are. Know what the triggers are, because that is the first step to learning to deal with what is making you angry. You have to know first what is triggering this anger. Why am I angry? Or why does this thing make me angry? Learn to identify your triggers. Next, learn also how your body responds to anger. Learn what your body feels like when you experience the anger response. When that amygdala triggers that anger response, what does your body do? How do you feel? Is it that you get headaches? Do you feel tightness in your chest? Do you sweat? What is your body's typical response? And that is going to help you to learn to track your anger. Because if you are repressing anger, it means that you're not paying attention to it. You're trying to ignore it. You're trying to pretend it's not there. What I'm asking you to do is the exact opposite. I'm telling you to notice it, pay attention to it, track it, know what it feels like, know what it looks like, because this is key to you learning not to repress it and ultimately learn instead to manage it. Okay. And so you want to pay attention to your body's response in those moments. So you can immediately know, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is anger. This situation makes me angry. I am currently experiencing anger. And then you can take it from there. Start journaling to be more attuned to your thoughts and feelings. Pay attention. This is me once again telling you, don't ignore the anger. Don't pretend it's not there. Don't repress it. Don't try to act like it's a bad emotion. If you're feeling it, you're feeling it. Let it run through. You're feeling the anger. It's okay. Just learn to manage it rather than letting it manage you. Learn to identify and interrupt your own angry thoughts. As the angry thoughts come in, identify them, label them, know that this is I'm thinking this because I'm angry. This is a thought that is being triggered by my amygdala. I need now to go to my prefrontal cortex to try to reframe this thought. You can do all these things that I'm saying in your head in a few seconds. This is not something you have to sit down for an hour to do. right? If you are intentional, you can sit and do this in your head in a matter of seconds and make wiser choices where it comes to dealing with your anger instead of repressing it. Find a physical outlet for your anger. I mentioned this on a previous slide. Exercise is really good for anger management. Sometimes people ask, people will ask, like how? Because I don't see the link between anger management and exercise. Exercise helps your body to release hormones that combat the hormones that are released by anger. And that is why it's helpful. Your body releases stress hormones when you are angry. Your body releases feel-good hormones when you exercise. And so they are able to move those stress hormones out of the way for you, and therefore making you feel good, not just in your body, but in your mind as well. It's also just good for getting that negativity out of your body, out of your cells. Sweat it out, exercise it out. You just feel better overall after a good workout. Practice meditation and mindfulness. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this. I encourage people to get online and read up about the benefits of meditation and mindfulness. If I start talking about this, we will not leave here today because that's a whole other presentation. The only thing I will say about that is that it is proven and scientifically proven. When I say proven, I mean scientifically proven to work. It's not a gimmick. It's literally scientifically proven to work. Just don't take my word for it. Get online and do some research about the benefits of meditation and mindfulness. And try it out if you are inclined to, and see how beneficial that is, not just for your mind, but for your body as well. Learn to use I statements and to take ownership of your own reactions and emotions. It's okay to own your emotions. Don't label them as bad. Don't feel terrible to say, somebody said something and I got angry. I shouldn't have gotten angry, but why? If you got angry, you got angry. It's not about whether or not you get angry. It's about what you do to manage the anger. So you don't have to feel bad for getting angry. Take ownership of how you react to a situation. Own it. Somebody did X or somebody did Y and I got angry. Okay. So you got angry. It's not a big deal. Why is that an emotion that nobody's allowed to feel? You can feel all the other emotions, but not that one. Because why? No, that's not okay. Own it. Own your emotions. Use I statements and own it. Get used to owning your emotions. Too many of us have been taught not to say how we truly feel. A lot of us were raised in Caribbean households where saying how you truly feel was frowned upon. You could get boxed in your mouth for saying how you truly feel. And anger in particular, you can't say that you're upset. No, you better keep smiling and act like you're okay with whatever was said or done. You just got some serious blows, but you can't act like you're upset. No, smile. You better smile. Fix your face and smile because there are certain emotions that are not allowed. There are certain emotions that are considered disrespectful, and getting angry was one of them. You get angry, you're rude. You understand what I'm saying? And so when you grow up with that type of programming, you get to the point where even as an adult, you can't admit that you were angry about something. You feel bad. You learn to use your I statements, meaning statements that start with I, and own it. Take ownership of your reactions. Don't blame anybody. Don't try to put it out there. Don't try to project it. Just own it. I was angry when you said so and so. I felt angry when you did so and so. It's okay. I get angry. You get angry. Everybody gets angry, and we can own it. It's okay. The final one is to commit to feeling all your feelings. And this is just a follow-up to the previous point that I just made. Learn to feel all your feelings. Let's put away this idea that some feelings are okay and others are not. God did not make a mistake by putting these emotions inside of us. Every emotion that was put inside you was put there intentionally. All of them. No mistakes were made. If we think that a mistake was made when we were given that particular emotion, it is a suggestion that God can make mistakes. And I don't know if that's a thing that we believe, or do we? Right. So commit to feeling all your feelings. Commit to it. I am okay with feeling all of my feelings. All the ones that we consider good, all the ones that we consider not so good, all the ones in between. I commit to feeling all of them. They are mine. I was given them. They all serve a purpose. I will learn to feel all my feelings, navigate all of my feelings in a healthy way, and learn to manage them rather than repress them and act like they are not there. And that is what we all need to do, not just with anger, but all of the feelings that we often like to hide and ignore and pretend that we do not have. Okay? And that, my friends, brings me to the end of today's presentation. Thank you so much for your attention, for listening to me going on and on and on. And I will pause here, and I will turn the microphone back over to, who do I turn the microphone back over to? Pastor Drakes?
All right.
The mic is yours, sir.
Thank you so much. We want to express our thanks to Sister Joseph for that profound and very meaningful. All right. Do I start over? Okay. I was saying we wanted to express our thanks to you for that very profound and meaningful and very practical presentation, where we learned so much about anger, and I'm glad that you expanded it beyond what I probably was even thinking about, and put a whole balanced approach to it. We are grateful always whenever you can share with us online. If there is one question that anybody would like to ask, then we are going to take that question, not a comment, a question. In the church that we are here, if there's a question that you would like to ask, then in the interest of time, we are going to take that question. Is there a question here that you would like to ask? All right, I'm going to relay the question to you, Sister Joseph. Did God give us that anger emotion? That's for you, Sister Joseph. Did God give us that anger emotion?
That's the question. Did God give us anger?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like a question for you, Pastor Drakes. You're the theologian. I'm the psychologist. I believe, however, that God did give us all of our emotions. But, you know, I would love to hear your take on that, because if God did not give us all of the emotions that we possess as humans, then the follow-up question would be, where did we get them from?
From the devil.
Oh.
That's what we get them.
Oh.
I mean, I don't think anger is not. Anger is. I'm not sure that anger is a good emotion. Anger, as you explained from a psychological place, can lead to a lot of problems. Um, we probably would like to think there's a benefit in anger, but I don't think anger generally is something that is good. So if it is not good generally, the question that you asked and was asked, where did it come from? I think our nature really has caused us to develop some of these traits and behaviors that are not good. I think we're coping with them, and I think the ability to cope. I think what you were trying to explain to us is not that we will not get angry, but here are ways in which we can cope, we can deal with them and live with them. While you were talking, I was thinking of the frontal cortex, where the Holy Spirit, I think, wants to occupy and to overcome some of these challenges that we face from a theological, from a Christian perspective. We've got to let the Holy Spirit control that frontal part of our brain, because that's where the challenge really is. And if we can let him, when what's the word? The one that comes at us, right? When that comes after us, the frontal cortex controlled by the Holy Spirit will probably be our source of escape and strength, if we can depend on it. So that's from a theological place.
I would like to, if I could be the devil's advocate here today. Is that all right?
Sure.
So I repeat, I am not a theologian. I have to make sure I put out that disclaimer. However, I think that there are several examples in the Bible that we can identify where persons displayed anger. And I think one of those examples is actually Jesus becoming angry and throwing over tables in the temple. And I think even giving some lashes to some of the people who were actually in the temple selling. That was righteous anger. We can compare that righteous anger to maybe the anger that sparked things like the civil rights movement and, and those types of things. Anger that is rooted in the elimination of injustice or inappropriate behaviors and the like. But we also see examples of anger that was detrimental, like when Peter chopped off that man's ear that night. And so I think that we are responsible as humans for the navigation of our anger, as with all of our other emotions. We are responsible for the navigation of the anger, for the way we direct it, for the way we make use of it. But I think we have clear examples of the fact that we can make use of it and that it can indeed be beneficial depending on how we are channeling it and where we are channeling it to. So my question is, are we using it to drive people out of the temple, or are we using it to chop off people's ears?
Well, I mean, like you rightly said, I'm not sure that righteous indignation is anger. So I think our terms will have to be clarified. You're a psychologist. I'm not sure that righteous indignation of Jesus can be put into the classification of anger. Well, I don't know that he was angry in this. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying he wasn't angry. I'm saying I'm not sure it's the same kind of classification we can put that. Since you introduced the term righteous indignation, then we'll have to decide if righteous indignation means angry. You're the psychologist, so you could probably say if it means the same thing, because the intent of Jesus's righteous indignation was not that he was angry like we are going to be angry with somebody and want to. So when people say he run them out of the temple or even beat them, I think we are then putting him into the anger that is destructive. But I don't think his anger was intended to be destructive, or it was rather intended to be instructive and corrective. And I think that's what you're trying to say also, that righteous anger is more corrective. Unrighteous anger is destructive. And the one that we have to be careful with, that I don't think Jesus displayed, like Peter, was the destructive kind of anger. So I probably can agree that there are times when you can be righteously indignant, which does not equal cutting off somebody's ear, but it means that things push you. You see what's happening in society, and you naturally react to it and respond to it out of the heart of justice and as a response to injustice. That's totally different, as in the case of Jesus and the civil rights movement, to just burning people or burning down people's homes and having a cross and put something over your head and shout Jesus, and at the same time killing people. That's a whole different take on it. So I don't think you can't get angry. I think it all depends on what that anger, the root of it, and where it is intended to go. If we're gonna bring Jesus into it, then we will have to find a way to not see him as just wanted to beat those people, right? I think again, you know, from the Bible's perspective, if you look at that story, then you probably see it differently. I don't think Christ was out to be destructive. I think when he looked at what the context of that story is, that people were in the temple selling things, desecrating the temple, and Jesus being Jesus, he said, "You use my Father's house for your commercialism or whatever." And he wanted to make the point that the house of God should not be desecrated, and that righteous. It's like if you were to see, Sister Jules, if you were to see somebody slapping a woman, righteous indignation is gonna come up in you. It's not that you are like setting out to kill the person, but you can't help it, because that is advantage being taken on somebody. And that righteous, now if you walk away from that and you don't care, which happens a lot, even in Brooklyn here, people, people see something happening to people and they walk. And then there's one person who might decide, no, I can't. I have to stand up for what's happening, the injustice of this person. What happened to the others? They just walk because they don't want to get caught. They're angry, but they don't want to get caught in it. But that one person stands up, not angry in the sense of, I'm going to beat this other person to death, but angry in the sense of, this is injustice. So I'm going to stand up and defend the helpless. But, so anger, I'm agreeing with what is being said, that anger is something that has to be managed. If not, it's going to ruin us. And sometimes we get angry over things that we shouldn't get angry over. And there's no justification for that. And sometimes we try to justify it. That, like you started off with the illustration, they didn't help me clear the table, and they're watching TV, so I'm justified in taking the remote and slamming it and mashing it up. You can't justify that. That's just brute. That's just bare anger. And that is where we probably want to be so careful and to avoid. All right. Any other anything from the Zoom? All right. I just wanted to let Zoom people know we see them, and if they have anything they wanted to ask.
I do see a comment in the chat section on the Zoom, where June is saying that indignation is anger. And I agree. If you look at the dictionary definition of indignation, you will find anger or annoyance, which is provoked by what is perceived as injustice. It literally is a synonym for anger.
Right.
So
Well,
they essentially mean the same thing.
Once we put righteous in front of it, then we have a little problem there. So we either don't put righteous. The Bible says you can be angry but sin not. But the only time you could be angry and sin not is if it's righteous indignation. That's the only time you could be angry and sin not. You can't be angry and don't sin, except it be for a righteous cause. You can't. How are you going to be angry and don't sin unless it is righteous indignation, which is justifiable in the context of what is happening at the time? So yes, go for it. What you say? But you don't have to be angry to get out of a situation. No, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying the premise is that to get out of a situation, you have to be angry. That's not necessarily true. You don't have to be angry. Sister Joseph, were you trying to say that we have to be angry to survive? Sister Joseph?
I'm a little confused by that question. We need to be angry to survive?
Yeah, dude, I'm getting the feeling as though like anger is something good and we have to use it. I got a feeling from your presentation that you were trying to caution us to be very careful how we understand anger, how we if we have to be angry, that we put it in context. But I'm getting a feel like if anger is anger virtue?
Anger is an emotion, just like all the other emotions that we have.
A good emotion, a bad emotion.
As a clinician, I have to keep saying I'm not a theologian. I am a psychologist. As a clinician, I do not endorse the idea that human beings have good emotions and bad emotions. I don't think we were created with bad emotions. I think we were given a huge gamut of emotions because they all serve a purpose. Just like every organ serves a purpose and every limb that you were given serves a purpose, so all your emotions serve a purpose. I don't think God made a mistake and threw in a couple bad emotions when he created humans. And so I don't endorse this idea of these are the good emotions and these are the bad ones. We have a variety of emotions and all of them need to be managed and used well and carefully. Anything that is not practiced with temperance, even good things turn out to be bad.
All right. Well, we gotta leave it there because theologically, you know, again, I hear what you're saying as a clinician, and I fully understand. From a theological perspective, it's a little, in my mind, it's going to be a little different, and nothing is wrong with it being different. It's a perspective, two different perspectives, because then I'm gonna go into before sin and after sin, which is theology, right? Before sin, how man was; after sin, how man. So we're dealing with the nature before sin, we're dealing with nature after sin, which is not the issue of today's presentation. So I'm saying that from what you present, I'm agreeing that anger is something, is an emotion, and we have to be able to manage it. And I think you labored that with us, explaining how important it is that when we are tempted with that emotion and we can be destructive or whatever, that frontal cortex, I will always remember that, kicks in and helps us to balance off, to settle down. Sometimes you gotta let it go. Sometimes we have to pray and ask for the Holy Spirit's guidance to deal with it, because it can, if you react it with how you feel at the time, it's gonna be a lot of problems. Homes are gonna break up. You're gonna mash up stuff, and you don't want all that to happen. But I think the presentation was.
We have another question in the chat section. I don't know if you're open to taking another.
Yeah, we take one more.
So I'll just read the question. It says, when Lucifer and 1/3 of the heavenly host was thrown out of heaven, was that righteous indignation or just anger? That question is definitely not for me. That's yours, Pastor Jakes.
And again, we don't want to cloud this presentation with theology. I want this to remain where it was presented, because if we don't do that, then this presentation would go in a different way, and it wouldn't be fair to the presenter and the presentation, because what you said today, I like it. I don't have to put Bible in this to make this complete. It is complete of itself. And another time, we can possibly deal with the theological implications of anger, which would be a fairer approach to it. It shouldn't be a spin-off from on top of this. This should stand on its own, because that is what this forum is really about. This forum is to us to entertain a perspective that I think is necessary and timely, and it should not be clouded with other kinds of questions. It should just stay where it is, as a beautiful presentation. I sat there and I was really blessed, and I was educated, and I want to leave with that kind of understanding, right? So I think I'm gonna just hold it right there, because I know where we're gonna go if we introduce Bible into it and all that kind of stuff, and it's not necessary at this point. Sister Joseph, again, thank you so much. I'm praying, as always, for God to continue to bless you. I always tell you, and I say it publicly, you are a gifted person. You are a blessing to the body of Christ. I admire you a lot, because you are focused, and you are willing to use. There's so many people who are educated, being educated, and they have attitudes. When you ask them to do something, it's always some drama. But every time I ask you, you always say yes. And once it is within your calendar, you make it work. And I am always appreciative of your humility and your ability to share and to break it down, so that even those who are not at whatever level can really grasp what you're trying to share. And we will always respect and pray for you, that God will just prosper you and enlarge your territory. You have a program that I log into from time to time. Is it Metamorphosis? Is that
Yeah, I manage a social media platform which is called Always a Queen, the Metamorphosis, and I do a live broadcast from that platform once a month, usually the last Sunday of every month, and I address a variety of mental health issues. You can access the platform on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. But the live broadcasts are only done.
You on TikTok?
I believe it or not. Believe it or not, my brand manager insisted that I get on TikTok because it's what social media influencers do, and so I had no choice. I have learned to navigate the platform like the young people do. But the broadcast, the lives are only shown on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So, and they are all recorded. So if you don't catch me live, you can go back and watch it at your convenience.
All right. Thanks again. And we send you a link to Dion, and we are going to keep promoting it. I hit our chat with it sometimes, and I wish people would just go on, because I listen, I log in there sometimes and I'm listening, and it's always very educational and a good platform. All right, thank you so much again. God bless you all. Thank you for your patience. Those of you at church, see somebody like that, like they're ready to pass out. Y'all gotta eat. Bring food. You right? bring your lunch in your lunch kit. Go back to the good old days when you used to bring your plantain and your cassava and your kit with your fish, so that you can eat. Let's all stand. Thank you again, Sister Joseph. Those of you on the platform, thank you very much. Father, we thank you for the time spent here. It has been a good day. We have benefited tremendously. Thank you again for the presentation, the presenter. Thank you for the information that we have gleaned. Our minds are open. We are better prepared from what we have learned to manage our anger, deal with what we have to deal with. Let us assess ourselves in the light of all that was shared, so that we can know if we are assertive, if we, wherever we fit, we can be better. We want to be better. You want us to be better. So we submit ourselves to you, and we pray that the Holy Spirit will do the work that we cannot do. As we look forward to a new week when it comes, help us to be blessed, keep us all safe, grant us traveling mercies, continue to bless your daughter with much more so that she can share. Keep us all safe, we pray. Bless those on the platform. Keep them safe. In Jesus' name.